This is part 3 of our practice test, and this goes with chapter 2, where we're talking about positive and negative numbers on the number line. So this is how part 1 started or looked. And we just talked about writing word form for inequalities in part 2. And we started our problem solving, but we kind of stopped our video at the end of page 2 here. So we're starting up part 3 with page 3 of your practice test. This is still problem solving. We still have to show our work, and we have to think about these application problems. So number 13 reads, the table shows the monthly average minimum temperature in Alaska during 1 year. The monthly average minimum temperature in Alaska during 1 year. If I take a look, I notice that they have all of my months listed, January through December. I see the average minimum temperature. So this is kind of like the average low, but just the numbers that they've recorded, sometimes negatives, see a neutral 0, see some positives in here. Yep, they have weather kind of like Michigan, maybe a little bit colder. Look at all those negatives. And these again are in Celsius, so we're not real used to converting to that. Part A, what do they ask us to do? Which month is the coldest? Well, if I look at my chart, I'm looking for the temperature that's very, very chilly. It really would mean the number that is so far below 0, because lower is less, and in this case lower is also colder. So just thinking, I want something that's going to be in the negative zone here. Lots of negatives happening, but which negative would be farthest from 0, or the lowest on my number line, or maybe my thermometer if I was checking? I notice there's a -8 and a -5. They're both pretty low on the number line, but which one would be farther? Oh, that's right, -8 would be lower or less. So in that case, it would also be the colder. It'd be the coldest. And I don't see anything farther away from 0 or more negative than -8. So which month? I don't want to write -8 here. Which month goes with it? Oh, that came from January. I notice next to this -8, there's a January here. Part B, which months are the warmest? That's interesting, it said months. Like there might be more than one. Now I'm looking for the warmest temperature. So if I move up on my vertical number line, or heading this direction towards the positives, I'm looking for the most positives, right? So the most positive, or the greater value, or in this case they even use the word warmer. Maybe warmest, okay? So just thinking about the numbers that I've been given, I don't need to worry about these negatives anymore. Those aren't very warm. But I definitely have some positives in here. And which one is the greatest value? Oh, I notice there's a 0. That's in between my positives and negatives. That's not very warm. 4, 7s, 9s, 6, or 3. The greatest value I see here is this 9. And I see that happens twice. That's actually a good thing, isn't it? Because didn't it mention that I want to include months, more than one? Well, what months fit that? First, we could write July, and next we could write August. August and July share the same temperature. I'd be expecting to find the same temperature repeat at least 2 times, because I saw 2 lines to fill out for 2 different months. Part C, what is the difference in temperature between the coldest month and the warmest months? Oh, this is kind of like that last one. I already found the coldest month. Look back at part A. It was January. And I already know the warmest months. That's July and August. But this one's a little bit different than the last one with sea level or elevation, because I noticed something. My July and my August are up here at a +9. And my January is way down here at a -8. And I noticed that this total distance looks a little bit different. It kind of reminds me of the problems that we did with the helicopters, the birds, and the divers, oh my. It kind of reminds me of our hawk map that we looked at in some classes. If you notice, I have to figure out the distance from 9 to 0, and then the distance from 0 to -8. Well, isn't that kind of like finding a total distance? Because they're on 2 different sides of the number line, or of 0, instead of subtracting like I did last time, this time I need to add. One of my students today said that they could count the jumps. You totally could. If I went and put all those values in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I could count my jumps to 9, and then count my jumps to -8, and I would find it that way as well. I'm just going to use some absolute value. So the absolute value of -9, oops, I did that wrong, sorry. The absolute value of +9, because that was the warmest month in July and August, to the absolute value or the distance to -8. Remember, that was January's temperature. And I'm just taking those from the chart up here. This -9 we found, and this -8 we already used. If I combine them, I'll get a total distance, or a total difference between the two temperatures. So 9 is 9 away from 0, and -8 is 8 away from 0. Let's combine them and see what we get. 9 plus 8 is, well, 8 and 8 is 16, plus 1 more, 17. 17. Now be careful, they gave me words. I should probably give them words back, or at least a good label here. What is the difference in temperature between these months? The difference in temperature. Oh, couldn't I write 17 degrees? And they are measuring in Celsius if you wanted to say something along that line. But at least I've given them a label back. I'm measuring degrees. This next one seems a little bit tricky. Number 14 talks about Cindy's bank account balance. This table shows Cindy's bank account balance at the end of each month. Well, in January she had a positive, in February she dropped down, and she's got kind of a mix of things happening here. So I see the months and I see the balance next to it. We talked a little bit about banks and bank account statements today, but this one looks a little bit unique compared to that, doesn't it? Well, let's see if we can answer the questions with what we have here. Part A, in which months was Cindy's account overdrawn? Oh, this is a new word for us. Got lots of questions on this one today. If I overdraw on my account, it means I take out more than what I have, more than what's available. That is a negative. That's a bad thing to do, by the way. You'll probably get a charge from your bank. And not only that, it sounds like a negative as in I'm below 0, right? I owe money back to the bank. So which months? Oh good, it says months, which is a good thing because I see a lot of negatives here. Let's go ahead and find those. Looks like February is one. April has a negative. May has a negative. Those are my months. February, April, and May. 3 answers for that one. Part B, how much money did Cindy deposit in May? This was an interesting one also, because my students noticed today that going from April to May, it looks like there's still a negative. But notice this doesn't say how much she put in or took out. This is just her overall balance. We're missing a piece here. Well, for her to go from January to February, I know she spent money, so I'd have to do some comparison here to figure out how much did she spend. Well, she spent $2,530 and $550 more to end up being negative. So here, to move from a positive to a negative, she had to take quite a bit away. She had to take away $2,530, and then she had to take away $550 more. It's kind of like saying I'm going to combine some negatives. I'm going to put lots of negatives together and get a very negative answer. That's what happened to her here. I'd have to figure that out. I'd have to combine these totals and figure out how much she actually spent from January to get to her February balance. But they don't care about January to February right now. They say, how much did she deposit in May? If you take a look, she had a negative balance in April. But right here, it says that she ends up with a different negative. It looks like that negative is getting closer to 0. That's why they say she must have deposited money. She still owes the bank, for sure. She's still in trouble. Maybe this is a loan or something she has going that she's trying to pay off. But she's definitely getting closer to 0. The number's changed. So the question is, by how much? A deposit is a positive. She must have put some money in. So how would I find the difference? Remember, when I have two negative numbers, they're on the same side of 0. Instead of adding them together like I did when I had a positive and a negative, I need to subtract. I need to take the distance of her negative $2,100, and I need to subtract the distance, or the absolute value, to get to that 1,500. That really means 2,100 jumps to get to 2,100, whether it's positive or negative. And that really means 1,500 jumps to get to a negative 1,500. Remember, we're comparing, we're subtracting, we're trying to figure out the difference in the money that she submitted or deposited in her bank. So off to the side, I might need to do some stacking. Might need to use the algorithm. 0 take away 0 is 0. 0 take away 0 is 0. 1 take away 5 is tricky to do unless you use a regroup. 11 take away 5 is 6, and 1 take away 1 is 0. Looks like she put $600 in that account. Would that make sense? Let's see, if I work backwards here, if I owe $1,500 and I took 600 more away, wouldn't you be getting more negative? Oh yeah, 1,500 plus 600 more. You're moving to 2,100, and you're just moving backwards because we're talking about negatives, combining them. So just a way to kind of check. This 600 seems like a good answer. We just have to give it some context. 600 what? How much money? How much money? Well, how do we measure money? Usually in dollars. Looks like in this case, $600 was the amount of her deposit. This next one says, how much more money did Cindy withdraw in February? How much? Oh, I read that wrong, I think. How much money did Cindy withdraw in February? Oh, that's funny, because I actually accidentally talked about that a minute ago. I was just trying to look at the table and trying to come up with some patterns. In January, I noticed she had a positive balance, and then she dropped to a negative balance. She went from a positive side of the number line, up here at the positives, down here to the negatives. She went somewhere from here to down here. To do that, I'm really talking about a total distance, aren't I? I'm really talking about finding the distance between these two values. So I could turn those into absolute values maybe. The absolute value of January would get me 2,530 or 2,530. The absolute value of February would be 550. I want to combine them or add them because I'm looking for a total distance to go from one to the other. And again, this is very much like going from our helicopter to a submarine on that problem the other day. So off to the side, we might have to stack this up. Kind of running out of room here. Be a good idea to use some lines, huh? 0 plus 0 on this side is 0, and 3 tenths plus 5 tenths gets me 8 tenths. 5 hundredths plus 5 hundredths gets me 10 hundredths. We'll regroup that and make it 1,000. And this 1,000 plus 2,000 gets me that 3,000 up front. Looks like I get 3,080. 3,080, what is that? How much money? Oh, she took out $3,080. You might indicate that. Maybe I'd say was withdrawn. Okay. She withdrew $3,080. This is a good final answer. I think this bank account challenge is going to be a little bit difficult. I don't think students typically work with those bank accounts. So remind your parents, remind yourselves that we sent home a sheet tonight to kind of practice some of these skills about balancing checks and watching your check register, just so that you kind of have a little more experience with how that could look on the test. Hint, hint, wink, wink, something like this kind of appears there. That ends our practice test for Chapter 2. Again, we're looking at testing either Wednesday or Thursday, depending on which class you're in. So come back with this ready. This is a grade before you take the test. So I hope that you're using this as a practice tool to kind of help yourself out and prepare.